Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Every worksheet contains thousands of cells where different columns and rows intersect. You'll need to know how to work with these cells in order to enter and edit data. Every cell has its own name based on its location, sometimes called a cell address. In this example, the cell I've selected is where column D and row 6 intersect, making the cell address D6. The address also appears in the name box above the worksheet. To select a cell, just click it. You can even use the arrow keys on your keyboard to navigate between cells instead of clicking with your mouse. To select more than one cell at a time, known as a cell range, click and drag, and the entire range will be highlighted. You can enter lots of things into a cell. For example, all of mine contain text, but they can contain advanced properties too, like formulas, functions, and formatting elements. For now, I'd just like to show you the basics. We'll start with inserting content into a cell. This person has confirmed that she completed part 2 of the training, so I'm going to select cell F9, then type an X. It appears in the cell and in the formula bar, where you can also enter or edit the contents of your cell. In fact, I'm going to take this opportunity to change the X to a capital X, so it's consistent with the rest of the list. Now for the next person, Walter. Although it looks like I've made a mistake, he's on the list twice, both here and here. I'm just going to clear the contents of the extra row by selecting the cells, then clicking the Clear command on the ribbon, and choosing Clear Contents. You can also use Backspace or Delete on your keyboard. So let's take a look at what that did. It cleared the contents of the cell, but the row is still there. That's okay. If you want to delete the cells altogether, all you have to do is click the Delete command instead. That actually removes the cells from the worksheet, causing the cells underneath to shift up and fill in the gap. Just remember that there's a difference between clearing and deleting cells, so you don't accidentally delete cells that you want to keep. Now I'd like to show you a way to save time by copying and pasting content. For example, I need to mark the rest of the people who completed part 2 of the training. Start by clicking the cell you want, then click Copy on the ribbon. You'll see a dashed box that appears around the copied cell. Next, select the cells where you want the content to go, then click Paste. To access more paste options, open the drop-down menu here. These commands will come in handy if you're copying and pasting cells that contain formulas or advanced formatting. You can also get to these commands by right-clicking in the worksheet. For example, to cut and paste, select your cells, then right-click, and choose Cut. The original content will disappear as soon as you paste it in a new location. There's also a drag and drop technique for moving cells from one place to another. To drag and drop, start by selecting your cells, then place your cursor on an outside edge. As you can see, it turns into a symbol with 4 arrows and a pointer. Now click, hold, and drag the cells wherever you want them to go, and release your mouse, and the cells have moved to their new location. To mark the rest of the people who've completed part 3, I'm going to use one of my favorite techniques, filling in cells with the fill handle. You can fill vertically or horizontally by selecting the cell you want to use, then clicking and dragging the square in the bottom right corner. The fill handle can also be used to continue a series. For example, numbers, dates, and other information that's listed in sequential order. See what happens when I use the technique on my header row? It continues the series up to part 6. Now you know the basics, including insert and delete, cut, copy, and paste, and other time-saving techniques. Everything you need to know to work with cells in Excel.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
In Excel, every workbook is different. That means you may want to modify certain things, like the size and layout of your cell, to better fit the data you're working with. This column has been resized, for example, but not quite enough. Most of the text is still getting cut off. I'm going to increase the width a little bit more by positioning my mouse over the line in the column heading, then clicking and dragging it to the right. Another option is to auto-size the column. This will automatically adjust the width so that it fits the contents of the cells exactly. Just double-click the line instead of dragging it. Now the column is perfectly sized to the text. Rows work the same way. You can adjust them manually or auto-size them to fit the height of your text. Sometimes it's useful to be able to resize all of your cells at once. In this example, I'd like to make all of my rows the exact same height. To do this, click the Select All button in the top left corner. Then resize a row, it doesn't matter which one, and the change will be applied to the entire worksheet. Next, I need to add another row to this list. I'd like to put it in between row 4 and row 5. To add a new row, all you have to do is select the row heading below where you want the new one to appear. Then click the Insert command. The process is similar for inserting a new column. Just select the column heading to the right of where you want the new one to go. Click the Insert command, and a column will appear to the left. Deleting columns and rows is just as easy. First, select the column or row you want to delete, then click the Delete command. The column or row will be deleted, causing the other cells to move and fill in the gap automatically. Just remember that there's a difference between clearing and deleting. Deleting cells removes them from your worksheet. Clearing just removes the contents. You can also move a column or row to a different location. In this example, we'll move a column. All you have to do is select the one you want, then click the Cut command. Next, select the column to the right of where you want the column to be moved. Click the Insert drop-down menu on the ribbon, then choose Insert Cut Cells. Another useful technique for rearranging data is the ability to hide certain columns or rows. For example, I don't really need to see these 3 columns right now. I'd rather focus on the customer's email addresses. If we right-click, then choose Hide from the menu, the columns temporarily disappear. To unhide them, select the columns on either side of the ones that are hidden, then right-click again, and choose Unhide. Let's fast forward to the finished worksheet. Next, I'd like to take a look at wrapping text, which is one way of addressing cells that contain more text than they can actually display. For example, I'd like to resize my column of addresses to about half its current size, but still be able to see the contents. We can do this using the Wrap Text command on the ribbon. As you can see, this displays the text on multiple lines. Now for the finishing touch, combining the cells in the top row so the title of my worksheet can be centered in a single large cell. To do this, select the cells you want to merge, then click the Merge and Center command. There, that's perfect. To access more merge options, open the drop-down menu here. You can merge across, creating merged rows instead of a single large cell if you have multiple cells selected. You can also merge without centering, or split your cells up again. There is a downside to using the merge command, though. If you want to merge multiple cells, each containing data, merge will only keep the contents of the upper left cell and discard everything else. So you should be careful when using this feature. The best way to learn about merging cells, wrapping text, and working with columns and rows is to practice. So the next time you're using Excel, look for ways that you can customize your worksheet to better fit your data.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
The look and feel of your workbook has a lot to do with the formatting choices you make. For example, let's add some formatting to this fitness chart. That'll make it easier to read and more visually appealing. We'll start by selecting the cell that contains Fitness Progress Chart and making the text bigger. In the font group on the Home tab, locate the font size box. You can either type in the exact font size you want or click the drop-down arrow to select a size. And you'll see a preview of the results as you go down the list. I think 24 looks good. Maybe we could go a little bigger though. Increase and decrease are two other options for quickly changing the size of your text. All you have to do is click the command and there we go. To change the actual font, click the drop-down arrow here. Then make your way down the list, and you'll get that live preview again. I think I'll go with this one. It's different, but it's still very easy to read, which makes it a good choice for a title. So, how about some color? To view your options, click the arrow next to the font color command. You can choose one of the theme colors here, or if you don't see anything you like, go ahead and select More Colors. This bright pink should look pretty good with the color scheme I have in mind. Another way to make your text stand out is to use bold, italic, and underlining. Bold should be a good choice in this example. Now the text really stands out and it's much easier to read. I think I'm ready to add some formatting to the rest of the worksheet. At a glance, it's kind of hard to tell the header row from the rest of the chart because it just isn't very distinct. We can easily fix that by giving the cells a unique fill color. All you have to do is open the menu next to the fill color command and make your choice. Dark gray should be a nice contrast to the pink we already used. Now I just need to change the color of this text to something lighter. You can also use cell styles to quickly apply different formatting in your workbook. Let's give it a try on the rest of our data here. When you're ready, click the Cell Styles command, then mouse over the styles for a preview, and click the one you want. At this point, you probably notice that adding a fill color to a cell range causes the line in between the cells to disappear. I'd like to change that by adding in some cell borders. Click the drop-down arrow next to the border commands, and you'll find a lot of different options. For example, you can add a top and bottom border, a thick outside border, and even different line colors and styles. For a border that goes all the way outside and in between the cells, choose all borders. Okay, one last thing I'd like to show you is how to change the placement or alignment of your text using the options in the alignment group. In addition to left, center, and right, text can also be aligned to the bottom, middle, or top of the cell. Aligning the text to the middle center should make this data really nice and easy to read. There we go. See what a big difference formatting can make? Not only does my spreadsheet look better than it did before, it's also easier to review the data.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Workbooks can be used completely electronically, but sometimes you need to print them too. It's important to understand the basics of printing, plus the other things you have control over, like what parts of the worksheet to print, and more. You'll find everything you need in the Backstage view in the Print pane. Here you can adjust your settings, see a preview, and print your workbook all in one place. Now you could just enter the number of copies you want and then click the Print button right away. But if you want more control over the finished product, you might want to take a look at the options below. If your workbook contains multiple sheets, the first thing you'll need to do is decide whether to print only the active sheets, which is the default print method, or the entire workbook. You can also narrow it down to just your current selection. Let's go back to our workbook so we can review how these options work. A worksheet is considered active when it's selected, like the central sheet is selected now. To print more than one worksheet, but not the entire workbook, just hold Control on your keyboard while you select the sheets you want. Now Excel will print the sales figures for the West Coast, East Coast, and Central offices. However, that's not quite what I want. The data I'm after is more specific. The sales records for the top 40 salespeople at the Central office. As you can see, I've already sorted that data from largest to smallest and marked the top 40 with a gold star. We don't want to print the entire worksheet because that would include more data than we need. Instead, why don't we print just a selection? Start by selecting the data you want, including your header row if you have one. Then navigate back to the Print pane in the Backstage view. Watch the preview closely and you'll notice it changes when we switch from Print Active Sheets down to Print Selection. Now only my current selection appears on the printout, the top 40 salespeople for the Central office. As an alternative, you can create a permanent selection using the Print Area command. You'll find it on the Page Layout tab. Just select your data, then choose Set Print Area from the menu. If you change your mind or no longer need it, choose Clear to remove it. I do see some other things I'd like to address now, starting with the page orientation. Our current orientation is portrait or vertical, a good choice if your goal is to fit more rows on each page. I'd like to switch to landscape or horizontal so I can fit more columns instead. Another option is to go to Scaling and choose Fit All Columns on One Page. This automatically shrinks your printout so every column fits on a single sheet of paper. This can be a great way to condense your content, but it just depends on the worksheet. If you have a lot of data, it can make it difficult to read. I think I'll switch back to no scaling. Then take a closer look at how the data is being arranged. There's enough of it here that the last few rows have to be listed on a separate page. The next two pages are also lacking some context. Luckily, we can repeat important data like the header row using a feature called Print Titles. That way, we'll know who these figures belong to and what months they're for. All you have to do is go to the Page Layout tab, and then click the Print Titles command. Next, click the button beside the range you want to repeat. You can choose either rows or columns. The dialog box will collapse, and your cursor will turn into a selection arrow. From here, select the data you want to repeat, in this example, row 1. Then click the button to go back. Do the same for your columns if you have any that you want to include. I'm going to go ahead and select the first column with all the employees' names. When you're done, click OK. And we'll be able to confirm the change once we get back to the print pane. There's one more thing I'd like to adjust while I'm here. Remember how the last few rows had to be put on a separate page because there wasn't enough room? I'd like a little more control over that. Instead of the last few rows, I want the data to be divided evenly, 20 people on each page. To do this, I'm going to switch to Page Break Preview mode using the button in the bottom right corner. This makes it easier to see your page breaks so you can adjust them as needed. All you have to do is click and drag the blue dotted line, then release where you want the page break to go. Let's go back to the print pane where we can see the changes have taken effect. The data is now divided evenly on each page, and the print titles make it much easier to follow. As you can see, the total column is the only thing that didn't make it onto the previous page. I bet we could fix that by making the margins a little smaller. You can adjust your margins manually using the button in the bottom right corner, or you can choose a preset from the Margins menu. I think the narrow option should give us just enough room. Perfect! Now I'm ready to print. At this point, all you have to do is click the Print button, and Excel will print your data exactly as it appeared in the preview.